You're listening to Startup Universe Talks, a podcast where we meet with startup founders, angel investors, and major stakeholders of the startup ecosystem. They let us in on the do's and don'ts of running a startup, their career story, and the process of succeeding as well as failing. In other words, everything of interest to startup nerds. Startup Universe is a massive network of opportunities for tech startup founders.
Hello everyone, this is Startup Universe Talks. I'm George, and today we have with us Loretta Tioiela from Next Sequence. Loretta, it is great to have you with us today. First of all, in order for our audience to get to know you better and what you have done so far, could you share with us a little bit of your story and career so far?
Yes, of course. So I'm the founder and managing partner of Next Sequence. And Next Sequence is an accelerator fund investing importantly in tech bio startups in pre-seed stage. We invest in Europe and in the US, but hopefully we'll be able to invest globally soon.
Oh, that's great. And we also noticed that you have been through some changes and through explored various paths throughout your career. Could you share with us how did you start and how did you end up founding Next Sequence?
That's a very long story. So if we had to talk about this one, I think it would take us the whole episode. And the story is good. There is a lot of up and down, the cliffhangers. But in a nutshell, I spent the past 15 years in computing. Originally, I wasn't from computing. I was actually coming from academic research. I was a researcher in fundamental physics. And I left fundamental physics because of many reasons, especially due to the fact that I was ill and I didn't have the financial means to be able to continue my studies. So I had to make that decision to leave what was my field of choice, my heart, and everything that I dreamed to become, to do something else that would be at least more able to sustain me financially. And so I decided to pick computing because I thought that spending so much time in labs, I was always struggling to process the data. The first part of my job was basically to run the experiments, but once the experiments were actually set up and run, the hard part was actually coming, and that was the part where you had to do something with this data. And I think that any one of us who have worked in a lab know that part. And so for me, computing representing this way of trying to identify patterns in huge amount of data, that was interesting. And my thought process was just, okay, I cannot do what I've dreamed all my life that I would be doing, but what I can do is I can support the people that are actually doing it. And so I just went on and did computing. And along the way, I fell in love with the discipline because it was perfect for someone like me. I'm curious and I like to learn all the time. And so computing is ever evolving. And so I started computing more than 15 years ago. I think in a way, I was lucky to start at that time, at point in time, because I got the chance to see computing evolve and learn everything from the pre-cloud area where the way that we were doing things was radically different from the way that we're doing things now, to living the cloud and then AI, I would say, age. So 4 years ago, I thought that it was not that I had learned everything that I'd come to learn in computing, because that never happened. And that's the beauty of it. It was just that I was looking for more meanings in my life. And for me, I wanted to reconnect to some part of myself. And so originally I thought about physics, but I knew that my feeling had evolved into something more mature, which was, yes, I love physics, but I love physics also for what it can bring to human life. And so bio was kind of something that I always loved, but I never felt that bringing computing and physics and bio all together was something where there was a career, actually. But actually, I found my way around. I just started small. I didn't know what I wanted to do necessarily. And so I started bioinformatics as a way to test out the water, see if my gut feeling was just, okay, something that, like you want to eat ice cream, but finally you decide to do something else. And then I just needed to see if my desire was true, because when you commit to something, then you have to do the hard work, and then doing the hard work is a nice way to test out if your desire is actually true or not. So I did it. I managed to get my MicroMaster in bioinformatics within 2 years very quickly. And that was kind of a trigger for me, because it meant that at first I had acquired some of the knowledge that was originally missing in bio. Secondly, it meant also that I was committed enough to spend 2 years to really study, and while I was working, because I was an executive at that time. So managing a child, because I'm a single parent with an executive position and also going back to school online, it was kind of a roller coaster, but I did it. And so I decided from that point onward that I wanted to really pick the subject that I was working on, specifically related to bio. And at that time, as I was saying, I was in an executive position. And so I started by accepting some of the projects that were coming to us at that time in bio, working with biotech startups, trying to provide infrastructure to them, because I was working on for a cloud service company. And so very quickly, it dawned on me that there was a huge problem in bio, which was the way that the data was basically handled. Most of the team that I was meeting were at the level 0 of data pipeline, meaning they had Excel files and that was pretty much it. And the way for them of managing data was through Excel files. So I realized that there was kind of a big problem, but at that time I was kind of naive. Because even though I had been trained in bioinformatics, I was far from seeing the forest past the tree. And so I jumped right on and started to get more connected. And the more I was working on it, and the more I realized that this problem of data and managing data in bio was not as simple as I originally thought. And so along the way, I shifted a lot the way that I approached that problem. Originally, my first impulse was basically to jump right in and do what I knew what to do, which was basically building a platform. But that didn't pan out. It actually failed because of many reasons. Data across stakeholders are actually spread. You have this notion of ownership. You have so many issues that you need to address. And so the original platform failed, and at least it failed at getting investors. And that is going to be very important for the rest of the story. It failed at getting investors. It didn't fail at getting traction from customers, but at getting investors to accept that there was an opportunity there. And so I decided to focus on continuing pursuing this idea. And I shifted the idea by saying, okay, the problem is wide, but the way that I'm going about it is actually wrong. Instead of building a platform, I should actually focus on the community, on the people that are facing this issue, to really prove to investors that there is a problem there. And so this is how I built OpenSymbio, our first entity. And I built it as a non-for-profit computing foundation, because my thinking was, we need a space, a neutral space where people are not going to feel threatened by IP questions, by intellectual property strategy and all of that. And a space where there is no ego, a space where people can share, a space where two communities need to come together, a space where researchers, scientists can come along and ask to be trained and receive information on how to process data, and a space where software engineers and data engineers can help and discover new fields where they can apply their knowledge. And these need to be a community. And so this is how it started, and it kind of spiraled. And very quickly, within a year and a half, we had more than 400 startups, all willingly kind of embracing the vision and confirming that, tech is coming to bio. It's not a fluke. It's really happening. There is a lot of things to do. There is also issues, because a lot of the tech startups from our community, because it was the community with startups ranging from pre-seed stage to Series D. So we had kind of a very big spectrum. But the only common thing was, most of these founders were coming from the academic institutions. And so they had never been trained in computing. And it was not the intent. They didn't want to become software engineer. They just needed to find a way to build alongside and integrate these new technologies. And so we realized that there was definitely a need for funding because most of them were struggling to find the right investor that understood the opportunity. And also there was a need for more than funding, the need for acceleration, the need for operational support to be able to guide them along the way on how to build the companies, because these companies are definitely not the typical traditional biotech startup. They are cool tech bio for a reason, because they're relying on platform. They are platforms. They are building a new kind of technology which goes above and beyond than just drug and therapeutics. And so this is how we decided to jump on and build Next Sequence as an accelerator fund. And this is what I've been doing ever since.
Oh, that's very inspirational, fascinating, and plenty of information that you gave us, such as being a single parent. But before I come back into that, so you would say that there wasn't a shift from computer science to biotech and physics. It was sort of a combination and a way for you to try to combine all of them together.
Yeah, it was about combining my passion. It was really about focusing on me. It was focusing on what I really wanted for myself. I think, when I look back on the mistakes that I made and on my career and the decision-making process, I think the most recurring one was never putting myself first, but always trying to design my career path or my choices for what I think was what people expected me to do or what I think was the right thing to do. And never really asking myself why I was doing things and what was important to me, and trying to really match that. And I think that in the fact that I was growing older and I was going through these personal, I would say, difficult time where I had to make difficult decisions for myself. These difficult decisions that I made personally for myself actually were opportunity and blessing, because they allowed me to also do the same thing professionally. Since I was already making them personally, I decided that I might as well clean up everything. And this is what triggered me to finally come back and think about what I wanted for myself professionally, where I wanted to see myself in 10, 20 years. And for me, it was obvious that I wanted to do something where I was not just, doing the work that pays the bills, even though the work that pays the bill is super amazing because I get to learn and do amazing stuff. It needed to be more at the human level, more aspirational, something that I know can act as a legacy for my son, something that I would be proud of, and something that if something happened to me tomorrow, I know that I will have no regrets. And so that's how I really thought about it. And along the way, it was not like, okay, you ask yourself the question and then tomorrow you have the answer. Actually, it was the process of asking myself the question again and again over 2, 3, 4 years. And the answer was never the same, but I realize now in insight that it was not the fact that I didn't have the answer that was important. It was the fact that I kept asking the question to myself again and again. And actually every iteration that came in between served a purpose, because it guided me into one direction, and then you open a door, and then you open another door, and it keeps opening, and then it keeps defining itself, and then backward, flash forward, you are just like, it's more than 5 years now, and the definition now is so clear, but it would have never been that clear if I hadn't been keeping asking myself the question and opening doors during the past 5 years.
And that's also a very good message for our audience, that we always have to keep looking and to not forget to see what we want ourselves, and not what the society or other people tell us. Just to clarify, the interest for physics and biology came before computer science, or was it something that you had for a long time? Was it something that you cultivated along with computer science? Or
No, yeah.
was there a moment that you saw something, brilliant idea, and you said, oh, that's an interesting sector, I should dive more into it?
Yeah, of course. It brings me back to the question about my personal story as a person, as a little girl. Um, I've been brought up in a very challenged environment. My parents were themselves actually not very fortunate to have good parents. And so my mother never went to school. So she never had the chance to got any of the experiences that I got personally. She was like 6 already working, and it was a tough environment. And my father was pretty much the same. He had a little bit more education. He finished high school, but again, he didn't have the chance really to have the supportive environment for him to go above and beyond. And so they met themselves, and she fell pregnant at 18. And so I was born in an environment where things were definitely challenged. And so I spent most of my childhood where it wasn't about money because we didn't have any. And so as a curious child, my parents actually made something very beautiful. They offered me a library card. And so that library card, I think, is one of the most beautiful gifts that I could have ever made to me, because to a curious child is everything, because there is no limit to what you can do and what you can learn. Money doesn't influence your ability to learn. And so that was for me the window into the world. And so I grew up as a very private, very bookworm and very curious child that consumed everything. And so from the very beginning, I dreamt about space, and I was obsessed with space, because I think in a way, for a child for me that was growing in such a tough environment, it was a way to escape. I was always dreaming about traveling, but to travel, you need to have money. I was always dreaming of everything, and my imagination has absolutely no limit. And so I think, again, I see a blessing in disguise, because this kind of forged my personality, this personality type where your mind is so active and your mind has no limit. It creates a mirror to your personality that makes you have a personality where you think that there is no limit. And I think in many ways, that was the trigger for me, and the love for space came from there. And because I'm a curious child, and my father is actually working as an horticulture, so he's working with plants. From the very beginning, I had this deep passion for biology. There was plants everywhere at home, and there was plants, and they were talking always about plants, and it was plants. And so I grew up with bio, but I think I picked up the interest only in high school, because I met this teacher that was kind of super hard and crazy, but I loved the challenge, and I started to study, and I realized I was good at it, and I got passionate about it. But at that point in time, I had to make a decision, and everyone was telling me, again, you cannot how can you be someone that want to go to space, work in space, or whatever related to space? And in bio, there was people were small-minded, and they didn't think there was something. And at that time, it was traditional career thinking, and the idea of building a company, becoming an entrepreneur, were kind of so far outstretched. So yeah, I had to make a decision. And so instead of picking a major in biology, I picked a major in physics, because this was my core passion. It was what was defining me. And so this is the path that I took. And as I said previously, when I had to make the tough choice of releasing my child dream, I picked computing as a way to still keep in touch with physics, because my thinking was, if you really, really love something, no matter what people is telling you and no matter what the world is telling you, in 20 years' time, you will still be talking about physics in 30. And if it's not the case, well, it means that it wasn't meant to be, and it's a good thing that you have to move on. So this is how I rationalize my switching from physics to computing. And so it's only when I had to make the decision of looking forward and thinking about what I wanted my life to look like in 20 years, a couple of years ago, that I realized that I left this passion for biology a long time ago. And it was not just about rekindling a passion. It was also about the fact that the subject on which I wanted to work was close to biology. I wanted to focus in neuroscience. The reason I picked up bioinformatics was just because I wanted to find a thread, but the thread to biology was not just because I wanted to go back to biology. I had a hand game in mind. I wanted to study neuroscience because I was and I am interested into the psychology of trauma, but I don't want to look at it from a behavioral perspective. I'm a technologist, so I want to fix it. And so I became very obsessed with brain-computer interface, and I needed that gateway to help me understand. And so that was the reason I wanted to work on biology from the brain perspective, working on tools that helps to rewire the brain, tools that helps people actually get past the trauma. This was the end game. So biology was obviously kind of a natural I would say evolution for me, rethinking about what I wanted, but also reconnecting with a real use case, a real problem that I was trying to solve. It was not just a child passion that I've left and I realized that I had again. No, it was, yeah, I always loved biology and never decided to move on and become a biologist myself because I made the decision to go after my original passion. But I could see the thread that was bringing me back to biology because at that point in time, I was 35 and I was thinking, okay, I really want to have an impact into neuroscience, and my focus is rewiring the brain and the communication and the bridge that there can be in between the brain and the machine. And I was obsessed with that. And this is how it started. So, but along the way, I discovered this issue from the data perspective. And again, you know, this idea of you open a door and then you keep opening another door and you keep opening them and you just keep going and going and going. You would have asked me 5 years ago if I was planning to create an investment fund, and I would have never been able to predict that because it was nowhere near to be seen. So again, that notion of opening doors, I think.
Oh, that's great. And I guess although your humble beginnings, you must be grateful now that because of your background and your origins, that this spiraled your way into being more curious, trying to find ways, trying to open new doors. And that's something also at Startup Universe. What we're trying to do is democratize the access to opportunities. We focus a lot on developing economies and to elevate those founders from the emerging startup ecosystems, think big, and at the same time provide them the resources and the opportunities that they need in order to scale their idea so that everyone can be equal. And at the same time, someone will look at you, and nowadays you will be seeing the ideal kid every parent will dream of. Like, you thrived in your academic journey, progressing from the Lyceum of St. Louis all the way to graduating as an executive MBA student at ITSED, attending courses at MIT and Harvard. And that's not all. Apart from the successful journey in academia, you have also had a quite successful career holding senior and executive roles. Any mistakes that you made in the past or any sacrifices apart from the fact that you mentioned that you didn't hear yourself as much as you would like to do? Are there any mistakes that still stick out to your memory?
It's very funny when people say it like that because it feels really, oh yeah, it's perfect, the perfect track record. But what's the backstory of every one of that is just full of mistakes every time. Not having to make the decision to leave physics was originally in itself a mistake. I would have liked to have been a PhD in fundamental physics. My journey from my prep school to my executive MBA has been just mistakes after mistakes after mistakes, because normally I should have picked an engineering school in what we call an equivalent would be called the Ivy Leagues school in France, and I should have entered that, but it was again failure because I was not again able to make that connection and bring back home the 3 years of effort into studying to be able to make the Ivy League school. And so I should have gotten an executive degree very early on in my career, as most of my peers around 2025 have following the traditional curriculum. But it actually took me 20 years in between the time where I left my home country to come to Paris to study. I was 17, and the time when I finally got that degree. And it was 20 years of hustling and struggling and being lost. So when you look at it, it seems so perfect, but actually it's just full of mistakes after mistakes. And so, yeah, there was a lot of sacrifices. Coming to Paris as a 17-year-old with, as I was explaining, coming from a family with no means, it was a lot of sacrifice because I didn't have the money to be able to pay for my rent. So I had to improvise and hustle and struggle. And so these were the first original years. It was a lot of sacrifice also to make the strong decision to leave everything that defines you, to do something else just because you have to survive and you have to work to survive. It was a lot of sacrifices because along the way, working in tech as a woman, I was always, without a computing degree officially backing me up and saying, yeah, I'm coming from a very high Ivy League engineering school. I had to struggle my way all these years because first I was a woman and then I didn't have the perfect engineering school degree for computing. And so but at the beginning, I was always considered like the plant. Like I was entering in the room, there was only male. They never thought that I would have any kind of technical point of view on what was actually being discussed, although they were not consistent because most of the time we were discussing about things that I will be the one doing at the end because I was actually the little hand that do the operation and do the production setting, etc. So it was kind of non-consistent for them to think that I don't understand or don't have an opinion or how things must be done when at the end I will be the one doing it. So for many years, at least in the beginning of my career, I was really treated as the non-existent one by my male peers. And I had to buckle up and silently smile and pretend that was not bothering me and let my ego not explode and not want to bite their head off for being such silly male, because most of them actually were most of the time saying a lot of things that were, again, not making any sense from a tech perspective. So I was actually better than they were, but I had to silently play the, oh, I go along and I'm a nice girl, and not be the, oh, she's antagonistic girl. You had to play that role. And so, yeah, I had to suffer through that. And along the way, I think my curiosity was the way out, because whenever people were trying to bar me from doing what I think what should be done, I would just always first demonstrate that my way was the way to go, and technically it was what needed to be done. And when that was not possible, I was evading myself by learning more and new things. And so my interest for AI picked up in this way, and I don't regret it because it opened new doors and it allowed me to move to other things. And so I think that was definitely something that stuck out for me in memories. And along the way, I also learned the ropes. You're not junior anymore. You know the lingo of politics in enterprises. And I also discovered that I was maybe not the corporate type, and that I was also an entrepreneur. So a long big career, I left everything. And I started blank all over again in Singapore. So this was for me a way also to discover a new part of my personality. And I realized that, yeah, I'm actually an entrepreneur at heart. I don't do well with people telling me what to do, especially if what I need to do is actually silly. And so entrepreneurship was that calling that eventually finally managed to just take a hold on me and just kept me alive.
And that's something that people, according to studies, girls and women, that would the numbers are statistically lower for women in the science sector, specifically computer science. And that's something that they should keep in mind, that in science, and that anything that has to do with it, when it comes to proving something in science, if you can prove it and make sure that the information and the details, the study and work that you do doesn't have any mistakes, that can take you a long way, and there will be no one that can reject it.
Yeah,
Because
as a woman, as a female, you need to work twice or thrice as hard as any other male, because you need to work to make sure that double check everything, make sure that you're right. You're constantly, the hardest judge is yourself, because you constantly have to rethink and doubting and constantly doubting yourself and rethinking and checking, and it's tiring. It's a mental load that we shouldn't have to bear, but we do. And I'd like to think that things are getting better, but I definitely, after the year that we have had, I don't know what to think anymore. I just need that we still need to keep pushing and encouraging young girls to go into STEM. And I mean, it starts very early. It pains me to say, but one of these, I have an event that for me is very characteristic. My son is 9 years old now, and I made the choice to provide him with a Montessori education because it's closer to my values and the way that I see education. I don't see children as an empty vase that where you need to pour out data into. My son is not a computer. I don't need to data load him. I need to build an individual. And an individual is not about the knowledge, it's about his curiosity, his love of life and everything of life, being curious of what life is and trying to discover his way in the process. And so the Montessori philosophy was for me the best way to go. And so even in that very privileged education type, it was shocking to me to arrive one evening to pick him up and say that the boys were outside running wild and kicking and playing and fighting, and that the girls inside were actually playing tea. Now, don't get me wrong, even if I grew up as a tomboy, I don't have anything against little girls playing tea. But for me, it was kind of triggering that there wasn't anything better for them to do than just mimicking the archaic view that girls and women are indoors taking care of household task and related task, rather than teaching to these little girls. I mean, at the limit, I would have been feeling better if they were outside running like the boys. But it was kind of really triggering to me to see that, because how can we say that we want to change if even from the beginning everything is actually skewed in the wrong direction? And I think it starts very early on with the image. I think that it's important to expose girls to different women, so that they can see that there is no good way or bad way. It's not the mom says, oh, mom doesn't work. It's not that. It's just exposing them to different role model. It's very good to be a stay-at-home mom if you're a loving mom. It's also good to be a working mom. It's not antithetic. You don't have to oppose everything. And I think that it's the human nature. We always try to we always try to divide and oppose instead of seeing things. We have a very in the physics terms, in the way that I see, we have a very fragmented way of seeing things, instead of seeing things in a gradient way where things are evolving across a spectrum. And so I think that little girls need to be exposed to all of the spectrum that it is to be a woman, so that they can define themselves within the margin and within the subtlety of what it takes to be a woman, and they can have aspiration. But if from the very beginning the only exposure that they get is the exposure of the woman that is the stay-at-home mom, it's not surprising that they would want to be that. And in itself, there is nothing wrong with that. But what is bothering is that they are not exposed to the different many possibilities that it can take, so that they can make a conscious decision of trying to define who they are. So I think that there's a long way to go, and I think it's in a way, but it will go through exposure that they get through education at school and the work that the government are going and all the women in STEM initiative are doing. But it also goes through your own education, and the most important one is your family, and your family should be the one really giving you this exposure. If I were a stay-at-home mom, I would be, I think, also focusing on showing her that there is also different roles, and so that she can, again, make a decision. So I think it's very important to focus on education, and that the choices that we're making as parents, gender neutral clothes, gender neutral wording. You cannot read an article where you have like a huge editor of a massive print say in writing, oh, I was serving dinner with my daughter, and my daughter and I were putting the table, and my son and my husband were doing something. That is not okay. I'm sorry, that is not okay. Why should your daughter be the one in charge of the household task with you? You're just educating her to be actually the one that is in charge of task at home. If there is task to be made, it's everyone. It's the husband, it's the son. Again, these subtle messages that we are sending to our son and daughter is not okay. It's the same for and it's not just the moms toward their little girls, it's also the moms toward the son. You cannot expect to provide a future generation of people that are actually conscious about this problem if at home yourself you're allowing your son to just fly by and just stay, with his feet under the table and just wait for things to happen, and with a woman that is going to serve him. I constantly tell to my son that, yeah, mommy can do this or mommy cannot do this, but this is a teamwork. We are doing it together. This is a teamwork. I am not your maid by any standard. So I think it's about the education that we're giving to our children, and it's a very important one. And there's so much that we can do into initiative and government organization and curriculum to change that. If we are not doing the right thing at home, we cannot expect things to change neither. So yeah, this one is a very personal one for me. I really hope that things will change, hopefully in the right direction. But to be fair, we've seen a lot of pushback on human rights and women's rights over the last couple of years. So this is why I was saying, I don't know what to think anymore, because as a woman and as a mother, I feel more scared than ever now than I've never been growing up. So hopefully things will change still for the better.
Hopefully, and exactly that's what's going on, and those are the things that should happen in order to see a change. And thank you very much for sharing all of these things with us. And I believe there are many things that a person can get by hearing your experiences and journey so far. Let me dive into some questions about your work and the sector specifically. In another interview, you've mentioned that the mRNA technology from the COVID-19 vaccine, that it was something that it was already being researched and it's known about due to the virus and how fast was built the vaccine. At that time, a lot of people were skeptical about this idea. And now at next sequence and everything that you see, have you heard about a next innovative or disruptive idea in the sector? And how long do you think it will take for the market to accept it and be ready for it?
Yeah, you're asking me about what is the best technology that I've seen out there. The thing is, we see a lot of things. We see amazing technologies from, we're thinking about recycling and the approach to recycling by basically being able to bring back polymers from plastic to their original factory settings somehow, to using plants and bioengineering plants to become minerals factory, able to produce the kind of material that we need for electric vehicle batteries, to new component in bioelectric or organoid. There is so many avenues right now. I think the common thread is not so much about naming one technology per se. I think it's the mind shift that is happening, that we have spent so many years, industrial revolution, trying to mimic some of the subset of function of what biology can do for us. We went for energy, and so we needed to produce and be able to harvest and master energy, at least at the very most basic elements. So physics and the emergence of electricity has run some of the initial industrial revolution for humanity. And from that point onward, we just moved to manufacturing to be able to produce at scale. And once we had these two, we realized that there was a need for us to do more and process more. But this time it wasn't about processing materials and matter, it was about processing information, because we had attained this level of maturity where finally we could elevate ourselves away from the need to produce just raw material and modified materials. And so information became the whole end all of the way that we were thinking about innovation. But I think now, in a very funny way, this information age has reached some kind of a first, I would say, a threshold. And that threshold actually is a very important one, because we realize that we cannot consume the resources like we've been doing. And it seems silly that we have never thought about it before, but yeah, we never thought about it before. And now we need to redefine things within new parameters. And I think that biology is just at the beginning of what it's going to be, because we realize now that everything that we have tried so hard to do, like wrapping and materials, because we need to construct, we need to have houses and element and stuff, we can basically rethink all of that. But instead of producing it through petrochemicals, we can have all of that through bio, by just doing exactly what nature has been doing for millions of years. And so it's kind of an enlightening of realizing that everything that we had to do was just looking out and looking outside to see and just see that nature has been the most innovative things by design for forever. We just didn't have the tools, the means, the understanding to be able to grasp it and replicate it. But now we do, and there is nothing stopping us in theory, whether it is in the ability to execute or not. And so yes, for me, it's not about one specific technology, like saying, oh, the mRNA. It's about that shift that is happening right now, of thinking of biology as a way now to redesign and rethink everything that we produce and consume. So from the food that we eat, to the clothes that we're wearing, to the fabric that we're using to construct our home, to the way that we're extracting energy to have electricity and power, everything that we need, all of that can be re-engineered through biology. So I'm definitely looking forward to that next age. I'm also conscious that I might not be around long enough to be able to see at least the very beginning of all of it, but I definitely will be spending the next few years until it's my time to go, to really bring my stone to the contribution.
Mm-hmm. That's very exciting. For example, I also heard about the concept some months ago in the long future that we could maybe store data in plants and trees, and With you as an investor, a next sequence, and an accelerator, for the founders watching us, what advice would you give them?
An advice for startups entrepreneur. I would say be bold, believe in your bold idea, believe in your crazy idea, even if everyone around you says it's not possible. I think the world needs these bold ideas. And I think that that's maybe the reason why some of the mention that I've made about some of the technology or startup that I've seen that I love the most, I think because originally the idea is crazy. The idea, for example, of creating diamond in space is crazy, but I think the world needs this kind of bold ideas. I remember when I did my switch from physics to computing, I did it into a very highly accelerated 1 year, where the goal was basically to get me up to speed on the basics of computing, at least networking and system administration. And then I had to pass a novel. And for that, I had also to prepare kind of a thesis. And I picked my thesis at the convergence between physics and computing. And I decided actually to write my thesis on internet, space internet, satellite communication based internet, where you will be sending information from satellite to Earth through actually laser beams. Because I was a major in physics. And so I love the idea that you could transfer information through laser beam from satellite communication to ground station. And I remember that when I went on and presented it, they were just like shocked, because it seemed so science fiction-y that it was just like, what if she smoked? Like, this is definitely not what we are expecting. They were expecting something on Red Hat, or maybe on, router detection, or maybe on whatever else, but definitely not that. So they let me go, and it was so surprising that they just like let me go nonetheless, and they gave me a passing grade. But I remember the feeling that they saw that it was like insane. Fast forward to the time where Elon Musk actually created Starlink and started to deploy Starlink, and now you would think about that and no one would say this is crazy. So, and it was 10 years before. So what I like to for the founders actually to keep in mind is be bold and really go for that crazy idea. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I will be on the sideline and waiting for you with investment. So just go for it.
Exactly, and I bet all of us have heard similar stories of people that had ideas years ago before they were actually implemented by another company, by a competitor. And any special bonus tips for founders that are parents?
Founders that are parents. Don't worry about that. I think on the contrary, you're better actually for being a parent. It makes you more focused. It makes you, I mean, becoming a parent in many ways can make you like a logistic ninja, because you constantly have to juggle everything, and at some point it becomes a skill. So I would say that don't sweat it. On the contrary, take it as this is your plus, your competitive advantage. So I know it's hard, and it's going to be hard, and yeah, most of us actually sometimes have to make sacrifices. For example, while I was building a next sequence last year, I had to fly around a lot, and I spent a lot of time flying around, to the point where I realized when I counted the weeks, I barely saw my son last year. I saw him less than 1 week per month during an entire year, and sometimes I didn't even see him in 2 months in a row. So I felt bad, and it was really hard, and it was this kind of sacrifices that you have to make. And I definitely thought at that time that I was not in for Mother of the Year award, but also know that the lesson that I'm giving to my son is to, when you believe in something, go for it and fight for it as much as you can. And in a way, I want to believe that this is an important life lesson that will be more important down the road than any object and toys or Legos that I can offer him. And so I want to take solace in that. I don't know if it will be the case. Only time will tell. But as a parent entrepreneur, yeah, it's definitely hard. There's no hiding it away. But there is a lot of sacrifices. But it's not something that hinder you. I think it's something that actually propel and empower you. So don't sweat it.
And for you personally, with so many things going on, the next sequence opens in Bio, and for the first time ever, the next that Bio conference going on, and God knows what we can expect from you in the future. How do you handle effectively your time?
Yeah, this is a constant struggle, people. It's not like I have everything under control. It's the other way around. I have nothing under control, and I just survive day after day, or try to survive day after day. So, so I think that this year specifically, I've been because I've been diagnosed with a lot of difficulty to not always want to start more things and do more things. I think my realization this year was basically to really focus on what matters and always making my decision process around what matters and constantly asking myself the question of what matters. But I also picked up a better life's habits. I decided to start being more mindful about my body. So I spend more time actually training physically, which I didn't used to do necessarily, and I left behind me a long time ago. And so that has been very useful because you feel more energetic. I've been also more conscious about what I'm eating. Again, not in not for aesthetics, but really as a way to really become more efficient. And these tiny changes, they start to add on now, so I would say that time and the way that you're managing time is also a reflection of the habits that you have, and having a look and really thinking and screening and trying to really rethink some of that can be very powerful in the way that you are successfully able actually to manage time. Now, in my case, I would say, an unfair advantage because I'm actually part of these small population of people that sleep very few hours. I only slept 4.5 hours. And so that's a very small circle. But I think that at the beginning and for many years, that was actually a problem because I always thought, oh, I can always do that because I have time, because I don't sleep much anyway, so I have time to do it. But the problem is you slacking a lot, and then I always ended up doing things at the last minute in a rush because I was just like, oh, okay, I have time to do this, and then you just like in a rush constantly. So having the starting to work on myself to actually fix this kind of thought pattern has been very useful, because now I don't think like that anymore. I'm very more thoughtful in the way that I'm managing time and not trying to rely on whatever kind of advantage I was given to begin with. So it changes everything because I'm more organized, I'm more able actually, and you can do more. So again, I think it's really about self-reflection rather than having like one goal rule that fits for everyone. I think it's more about finding your rhythm and something that is very close to you, something that reflect your personality type, your habits, your advantages, and all of us have one or two things that is just part of our personality and that we were granted. So working around that is actually more important than one golden rule.
Thank you very much for all the information provided with us today, Loretta, and for the insights, for opening your heart and talking about your personal experience. It was great to have you with us today, and we're looking forward to what will come next, because we are sure that there will be great things. that will start to get more mature, and potentially you will also get satisfaction out of it for working so hard from the early stages on them. Thank you very much, and thank you all for watching this. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.